grant or anything. Then we can change the topic to something else. Huh? There's very few response.
Maybe after this presentation they are going.
Okay. Anyway, so basically we planned this workshop just to sort of guide you through the technicalities and ways to organize your thoughts and organize your applications for fellowships and grants. Now, if you realize this, there are no set guidelines. I mean, there are some guidelines, of course, but there are no set guidelines, and the only way one can get informed is through the various experiences that other people have. I mean, so Vishnu, Sabuj, and me, we have had some sort of experiences. Most of you also have varied kinds of experiences, and this particular workshop to guide through the fellowship and grant, we thought that it's best if we can, at least 3 or 4 of us can gather together, share our own thoughts, our own mistakes and our learnings during the last 2-3 years, and inform you based on that. So there is no exact right or wrong way of doing it. The way, whatever we will be saying is our own experiences, and just take it in a way that take it in a way that there is no exact right or wrong way. It's just a sort of guideline or sort of framework to go through. Now we will be talking about quite a few things, and this is the organization of the workshop. First, Vishnupriya and Sabuj will talk about the fellowship application. So while applying for fellowships in other universities or wherever you want, you generally go through these 4 decision making. How to prioritize between the topic, supervisor and the university while you are applying for one fellowship, how to correspond with your supervisor, how to write a research statement or a statement of purpose after you have communicated with your supervisor, and then if the university where you are going to have their own funds, then it's great fun. Otherwise you have to apply for your own individual fellowships, and how to go about that. So this will be the first component of this workshop, and then we will go to another one where you don't want to go for a fellowship in an university or anything, but you want to bring your own project. Okay, take it yourself. So in that grant writing and application, these are the following few questions, decisions that you will often face, and so these are how to decide your question and the funding options. Then we will do some case study on how to write a proposal, the budget and all the other details that you face during grant application. Then the most important thing is, after writing the grants, given the people who are funding you, their criteria, how to tailor-make your proposal, how to secure the funds, which strings to, which chords to touch, that part. And at the end we will be talking about some extra documents which are needed, which are in common to both fellowship and grant writing. These are, preparing your curriculum vitae, recommendations and interviews that you have to face, which are common in both the cases, fellowship as well as grant writing. So, Vishnu will now talk about fellowship application part, Vishnu and Sabuj also. Then I will talk a bit about the grant writing exercise.
So, as Gito said, this is just strictly based on experience, because we tried for different fellowships and we've been successful with some and not so successful with a lot of others, mostly unsuccessful. So, there are different kinds of fellowships that you might be interested in applying for, either for your PhD or for a postdoc or to partly fund your project. And there are a lot of fellowships that come under these criteria. So we'll talk about the first important step in searching for these. Each one of you might have different criteria for applying for these, like you might be interested in a particular topic, or you might be interested in different things. So where do you first start searching? So if your interests are fluid, then you can look for advertised positions. most of the time you might find something that interests you remotely. So there are a lot of resources where you can search for these things. For example, Nature Network has a very good resource for PhD jobs, but in some fields like biology or molecular biology, it's not so good for ecology, I guess. And then there's Evolutionary Directory if your questions are evolutionary oriented, and so on. So you get to know about these posts through a lot of different resources, and you can search for this if you're not very sure about the exact question you're interested in, or you're not very sure about what to do. And the most important thing with this is, most of the times, for example, if you're interested, you want to do a PhD, but the position you're interested in is for a postdoc. These positions are generally interchangeable to a PhD, or if it's advertised for a PhD, you can change it to a postdoc. You should write to the supervisor and ask him if that's the case, because 99% of the time they will change it. If you're really interested and you have the background to fit, they will not have a problem to change it. And my PhD as well was a postdoc position, and they changed it because I was interested. They changed it into 3-year PhD position. So most of the times it's possible. So if you find something that you're really interested in, just write and ask, don't hesitate. And the other kind of thing is where you have a topic in mind and you're not sure, there's no advertised position, you want to look for a place or a supervisor or a topic, whatever that you want to work on, and it's not advertised. So where do you start, right? So where you start for this non-advertised positions is, you first make a list of your priorities. So it could be the topic or tax. Now you list which is more important to you. Is it important that you work for a particular question that you're totally committed to? You want to work only on that species or question, or you want to work with a particular supervisor because he's well known and you know that your career is set if you work with him? Or you want to work in a particular country, like for the US, for example, because you know there are funding opportunities. Or you just want to work, you just want to earn a salary, you don't care, you love research, you just want to do anything remotely related to your field. So you have to decide on these priorities, and every time you decide, all these 4 come into play. It's just not one or the other. You have to strike a critical balance between these 4 things. So how do you go about searching for a supervisor, or where do you start doing it, right? How do you prioritize? Where do you look for these people who work on a specific topic, or how do you go about looking for countries where this research is done? First thing to do is to look at journals, papers, publications, look at the authors, whatever. Otherwise, there are the web, like IUCN specialist group if you're interested in a particular species, and there is other, like you have countries. You look for different universities in a country and you search where your research is being done, the kind of research you want. Or there's always Google, the Baba will help you. So you can search for whatever topic you're interested in. Now, how do you prioritize? How do you strike a good balance between these list of criteria that you have? Right, so for example, the profile of the faculty is very, very important, because it determines your future career, because he or she is the one who's going to be giving you recommendations, right? And it also determines how much of funding you'll be able to get, or how much of funding he has access to. So that will determine with what ease you'll be able to work with. So it's very important to see what kind of funds are going or coming into this lab. For some fellowships, this profile of the university is also important. Sabuj tells me that for Fulbright, you have a better chance of getting a Fulbright if you go to a university which has already got other Fulbright fellows, right? So these kind of things are important when you look at what kind of fellowship you're applying for. For example, the biology department in Harvard is not ranked as much as the biology department in Stanford. But Harvard might have received more Fulbright fellows. So you have a higher chance of getting a Fulbright if you apply to Harvard than to Stanford, right? So these are the kind of things you have to keep in mind when you're prioritizing your options. So I just want to go into detail about the supervisor, because I know a lot of people face problems with this. Choosing a supervisor, I think, is the most important thing, because the amount of time he is able to give to you, the kind of research ethics he has, is he publishing recently, or has he published recently in this field, how much of access he has to funds. I think these are very important things you have to keep in mind while, it doesn't harm you guys to write to students of the lab or former students of the lab to ask how it is to work in the lab, because at the end of the day the productivity matters on the atmosphere in the lab, right? If your supervisor doesn't have any time for you, even though he's a very high-fi professor, it doesn't matter, right? So I think even if after you prioritized everything, please look into the supervisor. Does he have the expertise that you want to work on? At the end of the day, he's a guide. You are not expected to know everything, and that's why he's there or she's there. But I think that's the most important thing that you should look at after all the other priorities. And even if you doubts are common, but you should talk to other people in the lab. Don't hesitate to ask, and I'm sure the supervisors won't mind you asking around. At least in other places, I know that they won't. Here, I don't know. But yeah, so I think these are things that you should be really conscious about while making a decision. Don't take it lightly. It's 3 years of your life and your career, and it sets you forward, right? So yeah, be careful about that. Yeah, and also publication. Just take a look at how are they always the corresponding author on your papers, on the students' papers? Do they help with the writing? There's a section on who contributed how much in the writing, right? So look at that, and look at whether they also have interdisciplinary collaborations with other departments, or is it publishing only on a particular topic? These are kind of things that give you an idea of how much feedback they give to the student or how much interaction they have with the students. I think that's important. So what do you do after you've prioritized what you want to really get into? You want to apply to this professor in this university, right? So how do you go about doing this? First step is the communication, right? You write this email to this professor, and this is the most important step in your entire steps of choosing a fellowship or starting a PhD, because this is the first impression he's going to get about you. And if he's not very sure, he doesn't like what he sees, he's not going to bother responding. Even if you write again, I don't think it's going to make a difference, because you're just going to dismiss it. So this first step is going to be the most important part of your whatever research fellowship or your research career, so at least with that particular supervisor. So your first interaction, when you write to him, don't make a general email and email it to everybody. Write a specific email to each person you're writing. Personalize it, right? So for example, don't just say dear sir or madam, okay? Don't address them with their last name. For example, you have someone, say Colin Morrison or something like that. Write dear Dr. Morrison, right? Make sure that you address them with their last name. Never use their first names. I'm sure you know that, but no. So personalize the email, because these professors, I'm sure, get more than 100 emails a day from different people asking to be in their labs. So you have to show that you made the effort to read about them, to read about their research. You put a lot of thought into this email and written to them. So personalize the email. Then crisply introduce yourself. Don't write 2 or 3 pages. In the first paragraph, write about who you are, where you are now, right? So for example, I am whatever so-and-so. I'm working at this institute for the past 3 years on a particular topic, and what are you doing right now? Don't go into detail about your project. Just write this is your current position, and also state why you're writing to them. Don't let them search around the email to look at why are you writing to them in the first place. So be straight about it. I'm writing to you for a position in your lab, looking for a position in your lab, or I'm looking to fund myself for a PhD. So just be sure in the first paragraph that you state that. And in the second paragraph, describe a little bit about why you're interested in working with them, right? There must be something about their lab or his research. Say that, I've read your paper, or I've read your recent research on so-and-so. And that's why I'm writing to you, because my interest also lies in this area. I've done so-and-so. Don't copy-paste from their papers or abstracts or websites, because they're the ones who've written it. They know that you've copy-pasted it, and it shows a lack of, effort to actually write something. So don't copy-paste it or don't paraphrase it. Just write what you feel and be straight. Professors generally are very happy to see people, even if it's not very good English. If you've tried, if you put the effort, I'm sure professors are happy about it, that you've taken the time to read about it and you put it in your own words. So write why you're interested. And yeah, the next one. So generally, you best chance of getting someone excited is when it's something that they are also interested in. And it's not something that they are doing exactly, I'm also doing exactly the same thing, but what can you bring to their lab? So sell yourself, don't be modest and say that, I'm okay at this or whatever. Sell yourself, say that, I'm very good at this, I've done so and so, and I'll be able to bring this to your lab as well, I have these skills, right? So be sure to highlight your important abilities. Don't be hesitant or don't be modest here. And yeah, if you're not sure about a particular question or a specific project, be clear about it. Say that I'm generally interested in this area, I'm not very sure about what exactly I want to do, and this is why I want to ask you if you have something open, right? Be clear about it so that they know that you are flexible, you don't have a set goal in mind, and you are interested in working in the general area. So it's better to be upfront about it, because some labs work on a series of questions, right, from one student to the other, so they might not be interested in taking you. Or some labs might want somebody who they have a question in mind, but they're also not very sure, and they might come up with something together with you. So be clear about the fact that you're not, hell-bent on doing something that you've already decided. And the most important thing is, once you've done all this, if the professor is interested, the first thing he'll do now is to Google you. So that is very common nowadays. They see and a lot of universities have got access to your, they just Google you, they can see your Facebook page, they can see your LinkedIn page. So be sure to have your privacy settings right on your Facebook. And this was actually, we had a workshop, career skills workshop, and the person who was taking the workshop came and showed us what came up first when they Googled our names, right? So some of it was very obscene. We wouldn't want anybody to see it. So when you go back, Google yourself and see what comes up. Is it something that you would want a potential employer to see? And maintain a public profile, right? For example, LinkedIn, skill pages, and Google Scholar also has an option to maintain a profile, right? And best way is actually to keep a personal website so that people know what you're doing. List your projects, list everything in it. Even if you don't have publications, it doesn't matter. List what you're working on. If you have a blog, list a link to it. So, it just shows what an interesting person you are. You take effort to clean up your public image. So make sure you have a clean public profile. And LinkedIn and Facebook or personal web pages are the first things that generally professors see when they Google. So just look at it. And the other thing is, when you attach your CV or other documents, make sure that it's all in PDF format, it's not, editable. It's also irritating to see a Word document CV because of all the formatting things, so it's nice to send it in a PDF format, it's more professional. And make sure you attach all of it so that he doesn't have to search go about asking you again to send your CV, and it becomes a long chain of correspondence. You send your most recent popular article or something he might be interested in reading. It doesn't have to necessarily be related to the subject. If it is related, it's fine. Even if it's not, if there's a popular article you've written which he might be interested in, attach it. Attach your CV and so on. And there's this blog by Vishnupriya from CES. He's written a blog about how a lot of people write to him and why he has or has not responded and what to do and what not to do, kind of a thing. So I think you guys should check it out. It's quite nice. And
so I'll just tell about this small story. So there was this particular group of people. They were somewhere in some university. They sent spam mails. Okay. So for example, they sent spam mails to faculty outside India and also India to see as students and ask, hey, I'm this and that. I want to join your lab. Do you want me? So most of the international faculty responded, and most of the Indian faculties didn't respond. So this came out in current science or something else, and it made a huge kind of buzz. So Vishnupriya sort of he wrote a nice stuff about his take on the matter and how some students actually literally copy paste his papers asking for some are very unprofessional in their way, some are very professional, and the whole thing. And there are a lot of other stuffs also in that. So you might like to visit this website.
So this is just an example kind of letter we were given in a career workshop about the way to write. This is not like a hard and fast thing, but you can see that in the first paragraph, they write where they are, what they are doing, and so on. And in the second paragraph, they write how they've heard about the professor, where did they come across, why are they interested. And then in the last paragraph, they write about whether they'll be able to talk to them, continue further communication, whether they can come visit them. So this is kind of fluid, but it's just a kind of format that this is the length that any first email should be. So that, you know, the professor is also interested. He's a quite a busy person, right? So I think this is a kind of a good guideline to follow. This will be in the presentation. You guys can check it out. And then, yeah. So which will tell
before starting this one, I just like to say some blunder what I did when I write to any professor. Recently I did a blunder. It's horrible. So I am supposed to write a letter to Tim Cottonbrook in Cambridge University for my postdoc. And before that I wrote a similar letter with similar topic to Professor Thomas in some other university, University of York. And then I copy-paste. And I forget to change Dear Professor Cottonbrook. I wrote Dear Professor Thomas and comfortably click on the send button. And it went to Professor Cottonbrook, and he is a very, very busy person. And I have become so much anxious to get his email. Then I checked what I did, and I feel I just should kill myself. And then again I sent a corrected email to him. And within 30 or 50 minutes or maybe an hour, I forget, I got an email back from him, and it's very helpful email. He's not taking any student, but he sent me all the emails and contacts who can take. So sometimes you do blunder, but be a little brave and accept it and correct it. And I'm going to say, if then first you got the positive response that your supervisor, he's want to be your supervisor, have fun. He might want to know your analytical ability, how you think, and then he'll ask you to write a research statement. So usually research statements can be a compilation of your experience, what you're working, as well as what you want to do in that particular lab. So a research statement should contain some information about what is your current project, area of your expertise, with which institute or university you are affiliated with now. And if you join the particular lab, which kind of typical quality you can add on to that lab. And a lab might have 6, 7, 10 different kind of topics, maybe asking for different ecological concepts. You have to write something, you choose one, maybe similar something, and then you write your research proposal focusing that particular topic. And sometimes you write a very global, and you give a global introduction about your stake on that particular topic and which kind of question you want to ask. You don't need to be very specific. This is not the determining step that you want to do a PhD on that particular question only. This is the first research statement. They can ask you more and more. Recently, Supriya, when she applied to University of Chicago with Trevor Prize, he asked her to write 2 different kind of research proposals, and she wrote it. First one is quite general, and because he liked that, he asked her to modify it and give a very specific. And then you also need to write why this PhD is important to you. It's like, is it only a degree on how it can excel you in your professional and personal career. And generally it don't have any typical word limits, it can go around 2 to 3 pages. And other part is a statement of purpose. So sometimes, most of the universities, if you're applying for master's, PhD, some grants like Fulbright, Ravi Shankaran, they do have both research proposal, which is little different than research statement, as well as SOP, statement of purpose. And I worked as a selector during my Fulbright stay in Colorado, so I took interview for around 50 to 20 people who applied to Europe and Southeast Asia for the PhD of some other courses. And there I have some criteria, like 1, 2, 3, 4, which criteria, and I have to give marks. And there SOP plays a very important role because it gives you a extra additional information beyond your CV. So I would like to know, being a selector, as a person who you are. But statement of purpose should have some information about your current research area, your evolution to be a researcher, like which actually inspire you to be in biology. So for my Fulbright SOP, I started writing about pikers and how being a person who actually grew up in Kolkata, away from the mountains, and how I found myself in those Tungnath and those regions and snow, my experience, my teachers who inspire me. Usually since last 3-4 years, I try to help around 18 to 20 people to get Fulbright. So some of them, like one person, he got Fulbright this year, and he is from IIM Kozhikode, and he works on women empowerment and microfinance. And he grew up in some tribal areas in Ranchi, and he wrote about that. This first experience with people and their poverty, and how he that the information that they don't have money, and that he went to their place and get some right-hand experience about their poverty, which later on helped him to choose microfinance and poverty eradication as a subject. So it's kind of storytelling, but it should be supported with the evidence that you are doing some research related to that, and it can also incorporate your achievements, like if you got any grant, you got any awards, you got any membership. When I wrote my SOP, so I explicitly mentioned about WIS fellowship because it's a government fellowship. Then I mentioned about my IUCN membership. Then that time I got the Best Presentation Award. I mentioned it to make it more realistic. See, I am so much serious about my research work. Some fellowships, unlike those MSc or PhD SOP, some fellowship like Fulbright, they have a notion that a fellowship or a research fellowship, especially Fulbright, it's not only about the fellowship, like the research work, but it's also about some humanitarian aspect of your life, because it's about cultural exchange. So if you want, you can also incorporate some information. When I was in school, I used to work for Louis Braille Blind School, and mainly because I'm quite afraid of blind people, because I can't imagine that I can't see anything. So just to make me more comfortable, and I had a good handwriting that time. So usually we used to go and work as a writer for, I was in 7th or 8th, and I worked as a writer for 10th and 12th. So I wrote it as a something else, like I believe that part of my personality. And then you have to end your SAP with how this particular fellowship can help you to enhance in your life, your final aim. And for Fulbright, I know it's 1,500 words, but it can vary. And it also vary according to your expertise. So if you're writing your SOP as a master's student, usually that focus your BSc and MSc coursework, if you did a small dissertation, your experience and that dissertation, how influenced you, encouraged you to spend 3 years of your youth to be in the research. But if you are in some PhD level, then probably it focuses more on your research, rather which coursework you did or be in BSc or MSc. Can you go on?
Yeah.
Yeah, these are some relevant fellowships. So first one is the Marie Curie. So Marie Curie is incoming and outgoing fellowship. Mainly is for the postdoctoral. So Marie Curie is you have to have a supervisor somewhere in Europe, but you can choose your study area in India or abroad. And every year they asked, end of January there will be the notification, and you will have to apply by July with a really rigorous around 40-page application process, but your supervisor will help you out. There is no doubt, because it's very prestigious. The second one is the Erasmus Mundus. So it's mostly famous for their master's course. So they have plenty of master's course which are totally funded. But today I just checked their website. There's a new master's course called Tropical Biology, Tropi Mundus. Then they have SUFONAMA, SUFONAMA, called Sustainable Forestry and Management. They do have MEM, ME. Sorry?
They also have FONASO.
FONASO, yes. They also have very specific to GIS master's work. So you just write Erasmus Mundus, they will take you to Europa, that website, and there will be list of masters, and you just check and And there are some PhD studentship, like what Roshni got this year. Those are like a specific area project, and then she need to submit some research proposal related to that, and they got selected. And then there is that, this is by the German government. So that do have full PhD, where you will have your supervisor in Germany, but you want to do your work in India. So first, for that it's mandatory that some fellowship you have to know German, like postdoc, if you apply for Alexander Humboldt Fellowship, but for full PhD and sandwich PhD, they will pay around like 3 or 4 month time, like they will pay for your education to learn German. And then you have to have, in every case, you have to have your correspondence plus confirmation of placement, like your supervisor in his or her letterhead will write, okay, I am agreeing to take this person, if he got selected, he will be in my lab. So you have to have, for Fulbright you don't need, email will do, but here is very specific. And then sandwich PhD, split PhD, where you have a common topic where somebody in Germany is doing that, and that particular expertise is less developed in India. So you want to do spend like 1 year, maybe 6 months there in Germany and come back and apply it. Then you can apply for the sandwich fellowship. And they are postdocs. And then Fulbright, they have masters, they PhD, and these kind of visiting PhD and postdoc. There is no typical subject specific number for Fulbright. Like there is no number for biology 10 or English 5. It depends which kind of candidates they are getting. For masters, even if you are having a PhD, you can apply for a masters. I don't know the probability that you will be selected, but it depends on how exciting that proposal is. And then for PhD, it's only one from entire India. It's called Nehru Science and Technology Award. And since I have information since like 7-8 years, only one my junior named Shormishta, she got from biology to learn protein folding or something. This PhD is for 5 years and is the most prestigious Fulbright fellowship among all Fulbright fellowships. Most of the like IITians, they got there for the technical, like, I don't know why there's a biasness, but I found there's a biasness. So most easily, I believe people can get his visiting PhD. For that, you have to have a PI there in US and just write something which is in the agenda of Government of India and United States government. You get to know that when you go to United States India Education Foundation website, there will be list of areas which are interested. And then you can always torture them, like in Delhi, because you are located in Dehradun. If you are in Kolkata, you just call Kolkata, some other areas. So you can just call, ask your questions, and they will let you know if you are eligible or not. And they do have postdocs, and there is also, they prefer to have people who just finish their PhD, who just want to apply for the postdoc. Not like you already have 3-4 years gap, or you are a faculty, then you have a different category called faculty category. And then Ravi Shankaran, they have the one MPhil, if you want to do your MPhil in Cambridge University, they have visiting, which I got, like it says the internship program, where you have to have a person in UK or anywhere, but and then you have to have something conservation related, because it's the conservation biology fellowship. It should have very strong conservation aspect. They probably don't prefer much pure science research. And then small project means probably it's 2 or 3 number, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and up to 2 lakh rupees budget. Yeah. And then Tata Trust, they do have a partial funding for PhD. Like they pay some amount of your fees if you want to do your PhD outside of India. Not all. You just need to write Ratan Tata Trust or Dorabji Tata Trust and find it out. So I don't have much information about it. And next.
Oh my God. We are running at a super fast speed. Good, we can finish it before 2 hours. So, we come to the next part of the workshop on grant writing. So, how many of you, give funds to Greenpeace or anything like that? If you?
I gave for some.
You gave, no? Do you get calls? Do you get calls from these people?
Postcards.
Postcards, calls, checks. Right. So, basically there are various kinds of, people or group of people who give funds. If there are, it may be private. There can be 2-3 people who have created a corpus, like these guys, Ford Foundation, which is a sort of philanthropic group who wants to just spend their money in nice things. They might have some agenda, And then there are public. For example, Greenpeace, they get these funds from general public. Then there are some other funds also who get those funds from many people, ask them to donate some funds and create a corpus from which they sort of fund other projects. So mostly, people fund for philanthropy, some fund for vested interests. The most common example is industrial funds. So if the industry wants to create some particular, develop some particular technique or some particular product, they can sort of fund research on that angle, on that aspect. And all sorts of vested interests. Vested not in the, not in the negative sense, but various. I mean, generally currently a lot of donors, they fund for development projects, development, women empowerment, conservation. These are the buzzwords which catch a lot of funds these days. Sort of going for a better world and stuff. Now, do you actually need to think about who funds, why is it funding? I mean, most of the times beggars are not choosers, but sometimes you actually need to, because what are the ulterior motives of the funders, depends a lot on how your ultimate outcomes are going to be accepted. So if, anyway, I mean, let's not make any political statement out of this thing. You can go to the next question. So if you are writing a fund for a grant, what do you need to, where do you start from? You first start from, you start by deciding a question, okay? You need a broad question. Let's think about a broad question, whether you want to work on a evolutionary process or you want to look at, small, nice ecological processes, how a population is changing over time, a species is shifting its distribution range, blah, blah, blah. Or whether you want to work on, conservation problem. A lot of species are dying, how to save them. Conservation biology is one of those aspects where you easily get funds. Whether you want to look at a particular species or a bunch of them, a community, and all that stuff. So decide your question to begin with. While deciding, you need to, stick to a point that there are certain questions that are more globally relevant than the others at particular points of time. So for example, if you go through papers and all, one of the very buzzword kind of topics that are discussed of late is agricultural policy. How do you allocate land to different land uses, that maximizes the trade-off of species conservation and crop production. This is something that is, selling like hotcakes now. So if you plan a project which sort of targets this, there is a high chance of getting fund. So, I mean, there are things that you want to do. Okay, maybe you want to work on a lizard, for example, but your lizard won't fetch that much funds. Whereas, if you can put your lizard in a case where it fits one of these globally relevant questions, then there is a lot of chance to get the funds. So try to find out a globally relevant question where your small question sort of fits into. And also, why do you think funders fund? Ultimately, they fund because they want to, there are a lot of problems in the real world. To those real world problems, you need a solution. So most of the funders fund to get those solutions. So if you just write that, I want to document the species diversity and all that stuff, well, those are excellent things. But they might not be the priority of the funder. A funder might not want to, just make another documentation after the crores and crores of documentation that has already been. On the other hand, if you say, hey guys, see, this is clearly a problem, and if you fund me, I can find out a solution to this. Okay, if that is the case, and these kind of cases, this seeking solution is everywhere. If you take a fundamental research kind of thing, there are lots of theories that have been, that are now confronted with data. There are some particular lacuna of those theories. If you see that this particular question, if we ask this question, you will be able to, get a correct answer to this theory. That's a solution. On the other hand, if there is a sort of conservation biology kind of question that, for example, this species is dying, okay, dying out. These are the problems that it faces, but we don't know these particular questions regarding that problem. if you fund this project, we will be able to answer those questions and give you a solution. So if you seek solution, that's much more acceptable for the funders. So when you now let's see that let's say that you have decided your question, which broad category it fits into: evolution, ecology, conservation, biology, species versus communities, blah blah blah. And you have also selected a particular globally relevant question within that big component and sort of tried to fit your small question into that big perspective. Also have found out that what particular solution you are seeking to that. Now, given that, then you have to search for the funding options. Now, where do you search for funding? So when you read papers, for example, when I read papers, I just glean through the abstract, maybe the methods a bit, go straight to the results and the discussion. That's it. Then it's. But if you want to do that, looking at the acknowledgements is very important. The first 2 lines of the acknowledgement, either the first or the second line, it talks about where these funds are coming from. Acknowledging the fund is a core component of that acknowledgement. Okay. So if you, for example, if you want to, for example, Nina, you want to work on lantana. You work on lantana. Okay, you read papers on biological innovations. Okay, and those papers, in that acknowledgement, they say that, okay, this project was funded by this grant. So you know which kind of grants fund which kind of projects, right? Which kind of questions. So looking at the acknowledgement of the publications is a very, smart way of getting to know which grants are available to you. You can also ask colleagues. Most of us ask colleagues and get to know from colleagues itself. And there are lots of, devoted websites for this. This particular one, India Bioscience, this one talks about lists out a lot of funders that are available in India. And we'll also have got some resources, a lot of, long list of funders which we have uploaded, we haven't uploaded actually, which we will upload in the FEDUS webpage. Now, broadly speaking, there can be 2 types, the applied research and the fundamental research. The fundamental research is a pain in the wrong place to get funds for. Okay, and there are many examples over here who know the pain. Applied research is relatively easy, but still, getting funds ultimately at the end of the day is a tough job. So, depending on what question you ask, you categorize it into these 2 parts, right? Whether I'm doing something applied, whether my question has a direct consequence in terms of management of the species or management of that situation, or it is more fundamental. Does it increase the scientific knowledge and blah, blah, blah. Once you do that, if it's applied research, you can straight away target these kinds of funds, okay? Ravi Shankaran in lakhs, it's a very small funds, 2 lakh rupees, shouldn't say 2 lakh rupees are small, but it's a relatively small fund. There are also funds like MOEF, which has different categories of funding. CEP is a critically... 5 crores.
5 crores is a large grant.
5 crores is a large, yeah. So CEPF, the critical ecosystem, what?
Protection.
Partnership. So these are something you can get from India. These are the ones that you can, that are international funds. That SOS is basically the IUCN Save Our Species funds. You have a lot of US Fish and Wildlife Services. NatGeo has 2 funds. One is the Young Explorer Fund. So many of you are less than 25 years, which I am not. So you can get the Young Explorer funds. And then there is another fund which is the larger project. This is Conservation Trust basically. Flora and Fauna International, I think it's a Cambridge fund, not Flora and Fauna International. Then there is this one, Mohammed bin Zayed. That basically funds species conservation programs. So most of these are species conservation or ecosystem conservation funds. These fellows over here, Darwin Initiative and Rafford, they sort of fund those projects which, bridge conservation with rural livelihoods or community involvement. They tend to bridge conservation with social perspectives. So if you can fit your small question to a big perspective which has something to do with this community involvement, these 2 are nice things. This is actually a big fund, a huge fund, Darwin Initiative. So is SOS. SOS can give something up to, 80 lakhs, easily 80 lakhs, even up to 100 lakhs, yeah.
So for SOAs, your species have to be critically endangered?
Yeah, SOAs, your species have to be endangered. So these fellows, SOS and USFWS, they have some, as in each year, they list out some particular taxa. That okay, this year we will fund endangered amphibians. This year endangered birds, like that. So you have to be, just look out for. USFWS have many different sort of funds. They fund Asian elephant, tiger, lion projects. They have a lot of different things. On the other hand, Nat Geo, Flora and Fauna International, NBC, they are more general. They are still endangered species conservation, but they are still a bit more general. They don't have those taxa specific things. And for fundamental research,
CEPF is geographically.
CEPF is geographically. You need critical ecosystems. So fundamental research, on the other hand, we have quite a few from the Indian context. DST, DBT, CSIR, ISAR. MOES is Environment, Earth Sciences, Minister of Earth Sciences. So,
AS.
Huh?
AS.
Yes, Earth Science.
Earth Science. There's also Arts and Science.
Arts and Sciences. This one is Art Sciences. So these are the ones that fund sort of fundamental research, which are more to do with development of scientific knowledge and stuff like that. And among international funds, there are quite a lot of international funds. You don't have to, just note down all these. All these are present in the, will be uploaded in the resources.
There was this recent stay on foreign funds, something. Tell us what's the status?
So the status is there are many, it's like many NGOs, they sort of get foreign funds which are channelized into wrong sort of activities. So the government has taken a strong position on that. They're scrutinizing those funds and getting. If the organization has a good audit and all that stuff, then it's not a problem. If organization doesn't have a good audit stuff, then your fund will be scrutinized and then cleared up. It will take a lot of time. Another thing which Vishnu just pointed out is that when you prepare for a project and write a grant, you need at least 1 to 1.5 years of time before that, because many of these grants, for example, MBZ and all, they give funds in 3 to 6 months time. Many doesn't. Many take 6 to 1 year. And it's not just getting the funds, it's a hell lot of other things. After they have said, okay, we are giving you grants, all the official red tape things that you have to go through the organization and stuff like that. Plus, for example, you are doing a fund, that you are doing a project for which you want some equipment, maybe camera traps, maybe transmitters and all. In all those cases, you can't apply for those instruments unless and until you have funds. And so after you got funds, for example, you took 6 to 9 months to get the funds. After you have applied, after you got the funds, then you apply for those instruments. It will take another 6 months. So you need that kind of buffer time, at least a year or so, in hand before going for this. So all these are present in the FIRAS page. You can go through them, and it's given in this particular list is given in a way that the name of the funds and their scope, like what do they actually fund for. For example, this guy over here, Animal Behavioral Society, they only fund for behavioral ecology kind of stuff. So like that. Okay. So now, how to choose the funding agency? Now we have, talked about once you have a question and blah 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 blah, you have started searching for the funding agency, and you have listed out. Okay, these are the, given that I do applied research, these are the kinds of funds that I can apply for. Now, how to fine tune that search criteria? Which particular funds should I apply for, and what are the consequences of applying for these particular funds? So, in each particular funding agency, if you remember, I talked about this agenda that the funding agency themselves have. They have certain agenda, right? They want to save this particular ecosystem or species or whatever. They want a better world or whatever it is. So they are driven by certain criteria, and you need to understand that criteria to pitch in your particular proposal. So some funding agencies, they are site specific, like CEPA, the Third World Academy of Science, Ramsar Wetland is only for the Ramsar Wetland thingy, that CEPF is for Western Ghats and all, the Critical Ecosystem Partnership Fund. Some funders, they give only taxa specific funds. So for example, Panthera, then Save the Tiger Fund, all these, they are typically for the felis, for cats and all. There are some private primate conservation incorporation which funds only primate studies. There is turtle conservation. Turtle is like, it's quite, they get a lot of funds. So you can, if you're working for turtles, you are very lucky. And particularly marine turtles, they have a lot of funds. Then there are some topic specific. So for example, endangered species conservation, USFWS, Mohammed bin Zayed, RSPB. RSPB funds any endangered species, particularly birds. It's Royal Society of Protection of Birds. Then some are community participation. They just need to know how much you are involving the communities. Their way of looking at conservation is participatory conservation, a community involved conservation. So they basically fund conservation research which involve communities. So there is Ruford, Darwin Initiative and all that stuff. Plus systematics, there are a lot of systematics people. Shazia was one who used to be like really frustrated because there are very few funds which are in systematics. This is one of those funds which are there. Yeah, and then maybe Vishnu can talk about a bit on the women-specific funds. There are some funds which are particularly given to women, for their empowerment, and also
if women are taking a career break for family reasons, and you can show that you've taken a break for family reason, then there are a lot of grants, especially in India, for these kind of people. If you show that you've taken a career break for a year or two, then you have specific grants for these. And also specifically you're working towards women empowerment, you have certain grants. These are all listed in the website.
Right. So ultimately, at the end of the day, one thing is this. One thing is the criteria of the funders, which, you have to bridge with the particular question that you are asking. Whether the question that I am asking, this question fits to the criteria of which people, or for example, you want to work on medicinal plants of, maybe Himalaya. So you just see which kind of criteria-based funds is most applicable to you. Do you, is there anything over here that goes to the particular, so find out the sort of nice things about, or sellable things about your work. First, Dada, then medicinal plants, then community involvement. So once you have, listed out those, try to find out which one of these is fitting. There may be one or more category that your proposal can be sold. And after you have chosen the particular fund based on their criteria and how much it matches your proposal, then you have to look at also how much the funds, how much the funders fund, the amount of money, and the amount of money that you need. So for example, there are particular funds like this MBZ, which funds up to $20,000. Now they have reduced it, but anyway, it's like that. On the other hand, again, Ruford funds something like 5 lakhs, right? Up to 5 lakh rupees. Whereas this Darwin Initiative, it can fund much more. Okay, it can fund up to crores. USFWS, it can fund up to $25,000.